Okay, we're live.
Okay.
Um, well, I mean, I think the first thing I wanted to ask you about is when I came to visit your office. First of all, it was one of my favorite offices,
Thanks.
especially teacher offices, because it was just such a nice atmosphere. And then, of course, you had all the playbills from different shows lining the walls and the ceiling, and I was just kind of looking all around at them. And I remember when you walked in, you said, "These are shows that I've either been to or shows that I've been in,"
Yes.
which I thought was really cool. So it kind of made me wonder, how did you kind of get bit by the theater bug to start with? Can you remember like how far back it starts for you?
Um, that's kind of a two-part story, I guess. I saw Cats on Broadway with my mom when I was in kindergarten and was just mesmerized by live theater.
Yeah,
Um, and I didn't really think I was not a confident child ever, or a confident teen, or a confident adult. Probably till I was about 22 or 23, and made it all the way through a journalism major and did my internship and went, crap, I can't do this for the rest of my life. Because news is so serious and oftentimes depressing.
yeah,
Um, it just wasn't a fun career. It wasn't a fun internship. And so I called my mom and dad and said, can you help me stay in college? And that didn't go over super well. But
yeah.
of course, they helped me. And I ended up finishing the journalism degree, but never doing anything with it because I picked up a theater degree at A&M. I
Yeah.
auditioned for a show and got a pretty significant part and thought, hey, maybe I might be good at this.
Yeah.
But the stipulation with my parents was that I had to do an education component. So to get a teaching certificate, and I whined and threw a fit about that because there was no way I wanted to teach. And then
Yeah.
I did my first hours. You have to have 60 hours to complete one of the classes, and walked into a classroom and fell in love with it. So
Wow.
I got to combine teaching and theater, and yeah.
Well, I'd love to even hear more about that because, I mean, when I went to the Shrek rehearsal, which for those who are watching this, I mean, we just collaborated on Shrek together, and I painted projections for the show. And Laurilea, when you were just interacting with the kids, you're just so good with them. And that was one of the things that I think impressed me the most, was just your realness and how fun it is. And I mean, there's obviously a million things going on before a show, so many things to think about and so many things to kind of manage, but it still felt really light and fun and just a great environment for the kids to learn and be part of something like that. So was that something that you kind of grew into, your kind of love for working with kids in theater, or is that something that you recognize right away?
It was instant. That
Yeah.
very first classroom I ever stepped foot in, it was almost a sense of home, and that's where I belonged.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. I got very, very fortunate because I did my 60 observation hours and they offered me a job.
Wow.
Got to be technical director for a high school in College Station. Um, didn't really have a whole lot of technical direction experience, but I guess the guy saw something in me that I had a passion for working with people. I've always loved people.
Yeah.
Um, and offered me the opportunity, and it was kind of trial by fire. I learned as I went, and got to be their technical director for almost 3 years and learned a lot. And then I finished my master's and moved to Houston to teach. And I've kind of been around several places. I was in Texas, and then I was in Tennessee, and then I came to Colorado.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but yeah, instant. I knew I loved working with kids, and I knew that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Now, is there anything, because middle school is a unique breed, and I remember when I was teaching middle school, I was curious at first if I would like it because middle school was so hard for me. And then as I started teaching it, I realized I love this because it is such a transitional time for kids in their lives. And there's such a range, and they're kind of starting to find out who they are and what they love. And there's opportunities. I mean, there are middle school teachers I had that I really remember to this day. I just loved their classes just because I felt their warmth and just who they were as people. Is there anything for you specifically teaching middle school that you've kind of learned that you like about that level?
Well, it's funny. I've taught everything from kindergarten to college. We'll never go back to kindergarten because I think I cried more that year than the kids did. Um, and when I got my first opportunity to teach middle school, it was in Houston, Texas, and just kind of connected with that age kid. You know, you don't have the tiny ones where you have to follow them around constantly, but you don't have the high school kids that are just ready to grow up and be out in the world. Yeah, I can still be goofy and improv with my kids, and it really doesn't feel like a job. It feels like I get to go into work every day and play.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So,
well, let's shift gears a little bit.
Sure.
Since I'm into scenic design, I'm just curious, especially since since you just got back from New York, this might be a good question for you.
Okay.
All the different shows that you've seen. And it could be something that you saw on your trip, or it could be something that you've just seen in the past, because I know obviously you've seen a lot of shows. What would you say is maybe one of your favorite examples of scenic design in a show? And what do you think made it work so well for that show?
Visually, I would probably have to say Finding Neverland.
Okay.
That's on Broadway right now.
Uh-huh.
It's such a visually stunning show.
Yeah.
And they do a thing at the end where there's like a whirlwind of glitter. Literally, that's what it looks like. I'm really curious to see, like, to pick that apart and see actually how they did it. But just something that, you know, because the scenic design is supposed to add to the story and just make it flow or help it flow.
Right.
They did such a good job in Finding Neverland. I was so impressed.
Cool. Was it all practical, or did they do some projection work too?
They did a little projection work as well.
Okay, cool.
Some practical items, but some projections as well.
That's cool. Yeah, I'd love to see that show. And actually, when we get together and talk, I want to talk to you about that, because I'd love to hear even more about what specific parts of that inspired you and why it worked so well. Because that's the thing, I think scenic design has, I mean, like you're saying, it's such an opportunity to really bring the audience into the story. And in theater, in such unique ways. You know, sometimes with film, it's pretty straightforward with certain scenic backgrounds, but with theater, I'm just impressed the more and more that I see the different kinds of art and styles and the ways that you can really bring an audience into a play. So that's cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's next for you. So Snow White is on the horizon, correct?
Snow White and The War at Home.
Oh, wow.
I got really, really lucky this year. My principal loves me a whole lot, and I finally convinced her that we needed an ensemble type class. So it's kind of like an advanced acting class.
That's really cool.
We've never done serious theater at Mountain Ridge, and this is the year. We're going to try it out and see how that works.
That is super cool.
But it's a memoir of all the 9/11. It was from 9/11, and it's memoir pieces from a high school 100 miles north of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And it's by Nina Shingold. And she kind of beautifully pieced together all these different writings from kids and adults in this particular city or town. And that's how they came up with this piece. And so we're going to take it from start to finish in class.
That's way cool. The kids will love that.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I've wanted to do this one for a very long time.
Yeah, that's neat. Now, as far as Snow White, tell me, because I haven't even asked you this question yet about it. What is it about Snow White that kind of drew you to it? Like, what inspires you about that story?
That's a funny story. Because I wanted to be Snow White for Disney. That's what I wanted to do for a living. for a very long time.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, dark hair, blue eyes, like
Right.
I could do it. I'm just not tall enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And you picked I mean, aren't there multiple versions of Snow White that are out there to do?
There are, and some more serious than others. I took kind of the non-traditional version.
Right.
We chose the play scripts version of
Yeah.
Snow White, where the queen starts as a beggar woman. Uh-oh.
Can you see me? Hello?
You still there?
You're back.
Okay, that was really strange.
Yeah, we blacked out for a second, but we're
Yeah.
back.
All right. So anyway, I chose the non-traditional version of Snow White because it takes the characters and it kind of twists them. It stays true to the story, but it's not your usual take where you rush straight in and the queen wants her heart and all of that. It kind of tells some of the story of how the Wicked Queen got to be the Wicked Queen.
Gotcha.
So, and that's always been kind of a fascinating part of Snow White to me.
Yeah. Yeah, rather than her just kind of being one-dimensional, you can add some personality to her a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, and that makes it more fun for the kids, too.
And the mirror's an actual person.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the mirror's an actual kid who gets to, we're going to put him in like a silver, here we go. I'm a costumer by trade. So that's the first thing I always think of. We're going to put him in like a silver suit and a bow tie. So the mirror's kind of what I've been playing with that character this week, trying to figure out designs for that.
That'll be really fun.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I love that too, how there's so much openness as far as how you approach things, that it can be a set piece, it can be a character, it can be a combination of the two. So cool. Well, hey, last thing I really wanted to just chat with you about, and then, you know, anything that you want to talk about too. I thought, since we just kind of did our first round of working on projections together, and we're getting ready to do it again, in your experience, and I don't know, I know Lucas really helped to kind of take a piece of that and even came up with a great idea about how to approach the projections, but just as a director from your experience, was there anything you learned about using them that you think could be helpful to other teachers or directors who are looking to try to use them in their show?
Oh my gosh, yes. Lighting was probably the biggest thing. It was kind of like our aha moment of like, wait a minute, you can't put a projection behind you and shine a spotlight on it. So just to really make sure, kind of to, I would say, play with your space, you know, because you came over and we looked at the space and it was all conceptually done. But I would say get your lights out, turn your board on, get the spotlights out, and actually kind of like mess with the projections before Tech Week.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it actually is kind of refreshing to hear you say that, because probably the number one question that I get either online or just talking to people is they are curious about how to make it work in their space. And I even got an email yesterday where somebody out of the blue was saying, okay, my stage is this wide and it's this tall and I've got this to work with, and do you think it would work? And you know, I know it's one of those things that people are curious about. They're curious about projections. They'd like to use them. They see them being used in exciting ways. And so it's always, I don't know, it's something that I'm really trying to do more and more work with, is to really kind of demystify that whole process so that it's not so difficult. Because the people who are working at a really high level, I've noticed sometimes they just kind of go right into that language and it can go right over most people's heads. Or it's not always easy to see the application, how kids can get involved, how you can have your kids running that piece of the tech, or they can actually build the slideshow, or you can even have them generating some of the content for it too. And so those are things that are that's interesting to me. And I'm glad you said that, because that kind of validates something that I've been saying to people, which is there's really no right or wrong way to do this. Right. Just play. You don't even have to have the right image at first. Just get an image and put it in your space and see what it looks like, because your taste, your individual taste, is going to be the best judge, not based on somebody else's experience. You're going to need to see it for yourself in your space and see if it's bright enough, see if it works for you, see if it really helps tell the story the way that you want to tell it.
You know, and I would also challenge theater teachers out there to not look, this is going to sound strange, but don't just look at the big picture.
Right.
Don't assume that the projection has to take the entire back of the stage and that's the only place you put it, just like a scrim traditionally.
Right.
Because we kind of went off the grid. We went completely off of our stage.
Right.
And using kind of like a side area as like an extension to help tell the story.
Yeah.
I would just say, like, maybe don't count on it to always be so big. Use it in smaller ways.
Right. Right.
Especially for theater teachers who don't necessarily have, you know, an actual theater. We work out of a cafeteria.
Yeah.
So there are ways, I think, to make any space work.
Well, it's interesting because it makes unique spaces work, but then I think also it's where things are going too,
Right.
because the more advanced the technology gets, you know, I mean, obviously with things like Google Glass or things like that coming in, there's going to be a time where a theater audience can sit there and see the beauty of a live performance, but then they can also have these layers of scenic design on top of what they're seeing, which means things like a storm can roll overhead, or things can happen on three-dimensional flats all around you, not even with 3D glasses or that kind of a thing, but actually it can appear, you can appear to have the environment around the actors in some really unique ways.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this has been really fun. And I really think, just even based on this, maybe we could just do this again sometime.
Sweet. Sounds good.
Maybe it's halfway through Snow White. Maybe it's after the show, just based on what we're learning. But it's interesting. I mean, I popped into one of the classes at ThesCon, and there was another class that was about projections, and they were talking about the history of projections and how it's not actually a new thing. It's really kind of an old thing, and that they've been trying this for a long, long time. But what's interesting, I know the perspective of most people is that it really does feel like a new thing. And I think for a lot of people, it still is. Like, a lot of teachers are just now wanting to get into it, and they have a lot of questions. And like I was saying before, I think that if you can just sort of say, well, it's not that hard. Like, an example I'll tell you is when I was at the conference. What was the conference that we were at before ThesCon? I can't remember the name.
The Thespian Teachers Conference.
Yeah. I had somebody, a teacher, float by my booth, and I don't know if they'd just been in a class or something, but they were already discouraged. They said, oh, they looked at the booth and what we were doing. They go, oh, I'd love to do something like this, but I just don't have the budget. And they kind of had this list of reasons, and I stopped them and I said, no, that's not true. You actually can do this. And like you're saying, you can start small. You can try some things, you can use it as a support to what's happening on stage, and then you can expand it more and more the more familiar you become with the technology. And really not even the technology, but just how it can be used to aid the storytelling, you know, that's going on. So.
Well, I just have to tell you this super quick about my kiddo that's helping me work on Snow White. He is so excited that we're doing projections for Snow White.
Uh-huh.
He emailed me over the break and he was like, I have all these sketches and can I meet with Mitch?
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
They're super excited. It's cool that it's accessible to them.
Right.
Through the work that you and I have done and that Luke has done, the kids now see this at Mountain Ridge as something that's accessible to them.
Right.
And they're excited about it and they're ready to jump in and do the work. For me, that's probably the coolest thing.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm actually going to start doing more and more of what you're talking about, which is doing some workshops or just getting together with different classes and kind of sparking that curiosity and working with kids and showing them how they can do it, because really you can do it in any medium. I mean, I paint digitally. I mean, I start traditionally with pencils, but I paint digitally. But really, I mean, when I was teaching elementary school, I did it at, we did it for a show, and the kids did watercolor paintings that they then scanned in, and those became the backdrops. So like you're saying, it's just another way to get the voices of the kids into the storytelling and into the show.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what makes theater tech so beautiful and wonderful too, is that for the kids that maybe aren't center stage and don't necessarily be actors, it gives them something to do, something where they feel the importance of it. And I really think that it's always going to be something too that complements practical scenic design. I think the two will continue to work together in great and new and interesting ways. It's just going to kind of blow the roof off in terms of some of the things that especially middle school teachers and high school teachers can do, because it's kind of like, it's interesting. I'm kind of a film junkie too. And in film, you see this, that you kind of see this progression as the technology has gotten better and more democratized, and it's available to everyone on a Mac. You can edit a movie.
Right.
More and more people are getting into it, and so it kind of tears down those old barriers of you have to have a lot of money, you have to have a lot of knowledge, you have to have a lot of this or a lot of that, and it lets everyone really get in there and start trying it and playing with it. And then it kind of comes back to what's always important, which is just telling a good story.
Yeah. Well, and the cool thing, I haven't told you this yet either, but Mountain Ridge Middle School is going to have a technical theater class next year.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'm going to choose 4 technical theater elements, and scenic design is going to be one of them.
Oh,
and
great.
So that's going to get to be a whole unit next year of what we teach in class. So
Oh, that's fun. Maybe I can come for a visit.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, cool. Well, hey, thanks again. And well, I guess we'll just see you next time.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, bye.
Bye.